Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Today we're going to be doing another tier list for Fallout New Vegas. This time we're going to be taking a look at all the medium armors in Fallout New Vegas, and we're going to be ranking them in our tier list. Medium armor is kind of in an interesting spot in New Vegas because it's honestly pretty good compared to some of the other Fallout games, where in certain Fallout games there's just a linear progression. You start out with the weakest armor and then you work your way up to power armor, and that's just the best armor. I think New Vegas does a little bit better than that. The main reasons why you might want to take medium armor are usually either the effects are really good on the armor looks really cool, in which case, pick whichever one you would like, or it has a good middle ground between having a lot of defense and not weighing too much. So you want something that's protective like heavy armor, but you don't want all the weight and potential negatives that come with it. So let's begin, and I'm just going to go right down the list in alphabetical order because so many of these armors kind of look the same. But first up, we have the Advanced Riot Gear. The Advanced Riot Gear comes in at 21 defense or damage threshold, and it has a weight of 25. So it is kind of hefty, but it's not as heavy as some heavy armors are, and it has good defenses to it. It has a good amount of item health to it. It takes a while for this to break, and it also has a bonus of plus 10 explosives and plus 1 endurance. That is really good. All around, the Advanced Riot Gear is actually a really solid option, and to start off our list, this one is probably going to go right up into S tier, just because, if you're running an explosives build, this is probably one of the best armors to be running with that, assuming you're not maxed out on explosives. Endurance is always good, and it has a lot of defense and a lot of health with it, as well as it doesn't weigh too much, and this is one of the better gears. It is in the Lonesome Road, so it's generally, end-game stuff unless you want to run there early, and that can give you a huge advantage for all the other DLCs, so it might be a pretty decent option. Our next armor is Christina's COS Recon armor. This one you find in Old World Blues. This one gives you 19 defense, which is pretty good for medium armor. Weighs 20, so it's not super hefty. There's only one copy of this. It does have a decent amount of item health, and it also comes with plus 5 sneak. That's all around pretty decent too. I don't think it's nearly as good as the previous armor we talked about, but this one I would say is a solid A or B tier. I'm going to go to A tier. I think it's worthy of A tier, and it's beating out every light armor for defense. So if you want a medium armor that also gives you sneak, this is a pretty decent option for it. There are some other ones that are a little bit better that we'll talk about here in a second. And then we have combat armor. Combat armor is probably the most, quintessential medium armor. Certain raiders can have this, mercenaries can have this, you can find this in various locations around the Wasteland. You can go to the Boomer's place and you can get some combat armor, and it's pretty decent. Combat armor protects you 15, so not as high as some of the other armors we've talked about, but still pretty decent. Weighs 25, so it is hefty, and it doesn't have any other effects other than that. It also has decent item health. You're never going to be upset getting combat armor, and if you want to wear it, it provides pretty good protection for the early game. It does kind of fall off towards the mid and late game where you can get better medium armors than this, but I think regular combat armor is perfectly acceptable for most of the playthrough. I'm going to say that regular combat is B or C tier, steer towards C tier. It's probably A or B tier if you get it really early on, because not a whole lot of armors can compete with it in the early game, unless you want to rush unique armors, or you want to rush through the Brotherhood quest or something and get power armor. But then again, just finding armor on the ground, combat armor is pretty effective, so I would say it starts out as A or B tier, and then as the game goes on, it kind of falls down to C tier, where you're probably not going to be wearing it because there's better versions of it and some other better armors, but not bad at any point. Combat armor reinforced is 17 defense and 25 weight. It has more health than the regular armor, and it weighs the same, and it just has higher stats. This is just a straight upgrade, and you could easily swap out your combat armor for this. There is a couple places you can go on the map to grab this pretty early. Again, I think you can find it in the Boomer's place. I think there's at least a couple of these laying around, as well as a couple other locations where you can find dead NPCs that have this on them. So I would say this one's B tier. This one's all around pretty solid. Gives you good protection, gives you not too much weight. Again, not as good as some of these other options that we've talked about, but pretty decent. Then we have the Combat Armor Reinforced Mark II. This one is more rare than our other combat armors, and it protects more, as well as it has the same health as the previous armor we talked about. This is 20 defense and 25 armor, no other effects to it. That's pretty good. That is all around a really solid stat line, and it kind of gets you everything that you want, where it's not as heavy as heavy armor, but it's protecting you as much as heavy armor, and it still has good item health similar to heavy armor. So I would say that the Mark II combat armor goes right up into A tier. I don't think it's quite as good as Christine's COS Recon armor, because that one weighs a little bit less. It protects you slightly less than this one, but not by too much, and it also has sneak. So I don't think it's as good as this, but if you find this laying around and you don't have any other armors, especially if you're running like a heavy armored build, this can be a really, really good option. Our next armor is the Desert Ranger combat armor. This one you find in Honest Hearts. You find this inside of one of the caves. It's just laying on a table. This one protects you for 22. It weighs 30, so it is the heftiest armor that we've talked about, and it doesn't have any other effects. It does have good item health though, so this one is pretty solid as well if you want a little bit more protection and you want a really cool looking set of armor, because the Ranger armor looks awesome. This one can be a pretty good option, but I think I'm going to put this one up into high B tier. I don't think it's quite A tier. Maybe it is if you're looking for a cool style and something that's really easy to get, because if you want to run to Honest Hearts early on, you can find this super easy. You can also grab this and like the Survivalist Rifle and have a very strong build when you're running back to the Wasteland, and it will carry you all the way through. But once you start getting to like the later game, when you can switch this out for something like the advanced riot gear or some of the other options we'll talk about, it does kind of pale in comparison to that, but not by too much. It's by no means bad. It's still really cool and pretty good all the way around. Our next armor is the Elite Riot Gear. The Elite Riot Gear, there is only one copy of this. It protects you for 22, so same as the last armor we talked about, so the most that we have seen so far. Only weighs 23, so it is lighter, and it also comes with even more health. The most health that we've talked about out of any of the armors so far, so it is very durable. It takes a while for this to break. And on top of that, it comes with 3 effects. It gets you 5% more crit chance, which is huge. That is amazing on any build that's not an explosives build, or certain other builds where you don't really care about crits. Mostly explosives though. 10 more guns added to it, which is really good. And +1 charisma. All of that is fantastic. The Elite Riot Gear I would put all the way up into S tier. It is one of the best armors in the entire game. It is one of the best medium armors in the game too. I would say it's better than the Advanced Riot Gear unless you're using explosives, in which case then that armor is probably better for you. Even though it protects you less, it does get you more damage towards explosives, and the extra endurance actually does count towards like your total health, assuming you're not already at 10. And then up next we have another really strong armor. We have the Gannon family Tesla armor. So the Tesla armor can only be found during a quest, or technically a few quests. Usually you obtain this from doing Arcane Gannon's quest, which I had said on the heavy armor is how you got the Remnant's armor, which is kind of true, but not entirely. That's one way that you can get it, but you can also just find it. You don't actually need to do that quest. I completely forgot about that. This one is more tied to the quest. This one provides the most amount of protection out of any of the medium armors, coming in at 26, which is a lot of defense. I think the only other armor that comes close to this is the Remnant's armor, which is a 28. So this is the second strongest armor, or at least second most defending armor in the game. This one does weigh 35, so it is one of the heavier armors. It's actually the heaviest armor that we've talked about, and I think it remains the heaviest armor out of any of the medium armors. It's got okay item health, and it does have some really cool bonuses. It has +10 energy weapons, which is really good, and it has +20 rad resist to it. That's also really good. This is basically power armor, but it's counted as a medium armor, and it looks really cool. It's a nice reference to Fallout 2. I would say that this one's also S tier. If you're looking for just a heavy armor that doesn't weigh as much as heavy armor, this can be a really good option. This one is actually really, really solid. So I would say it's S tier, especially if you're going to like a tank build. Then our next armor is the Legion Centurion armor. The Legion Centurion armor protects you 18, which is pretty good, although it does weigh 35, the same weight that we just talked about with the Gannon. So it is not nearly as good as that, and it doesn't come with any sort of effects, which is kind of disappointing. It does count as Legion armor too, so you can pretend to be a Legionary, which can be kind of useful depending on how you wish to play the game. And this one is all around pretty decent. It actually gives you a good amount of defense overall. It's basically combat armor reinforced, but slightly better, and it still has decent item health. It doesn't have as much health as like the combat armor reinforced, so I think I'd also put it in B tier, but on the lower end of B tier. Then we have the Legion Vex armor. I can't say the rest of the name for this one. This one provides 14 armor, which is pretty good, and it weighs 26, which is kind of hefty, and it doesn't have any effect, but it does count as Legion armor. This one's okay. You're probably not going to take it over like combat armor, unless you just get it early on, which you can, potentially, if you want to kill a couple Legionaries again, if you're against the Legion. So it's fine. I would say this one's like C tier. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Then we have the lightweight metal armor, which doesn't count as heavy armor. This is actually counted as medium armor. You can start with this at the very start of the game if you have the mercenary pack, and you'll also get like the mercenary's grenade rifle, which is pretty good too. The grenade rifle is actually really good. The armor, not as much. The armor gives you 12 defense, which is okay for medium armor. Weighs 20, so it's not one of the heavier medium armors. And it does come with the downside that all metal armor has, which is -1 agility. -1 agility sucks. That makes it so your reload speed is a little bit slower, and it also makes it so you have slightly less action points. Neither of those are really great things. This is okay if you just want to go with the heaviest. I think this is the heaviest, most defending armor at the very start of the game, which is okay if you're doing like an explosives build or you want to do like a melee tank build. That can be alright, but you're probably going to switch it out pretty quick because 12 defense can get outclassed by even a lot of light armor. So I would say that the metal armor is probably like the first one in D tier. Maybe it's probably C tier at the very start because at least it has good defenses and you're probably not going to find very much other armor. But it's going to fall out pretty quickly, especially if you find like heavier armor that you want to wear, or if you find like some combat armor, you're going to switch it out like as soon as you can. Then our next armor is the Marked Patrol armor. The Marked Patrol armor you can find in the Lonesome Road. Some of the Marked Men have this, and this is probably one of the better Marked Men armors, which sadly isn't saying very much. This one protects you for 12, which is again kind of okay. It weighs 22, so it's even heavier than the lightweight armor. And it comes with the bonuses of +2 energy weapons and +1 perception. +1 perception is fine, because that'll actually get you even more energy weapons. That'll get you another +2, assuming you're not at 10 perception. And it will also get you some lockpicking and some explosives. All of that is fine. And again, this is probably the best of the Marked Men armor. It doesn't come with any downside, and you can get this fairly early on if you just want to run to the Divide or just run to part of the Divide, and then you can always come back. So I would say this one is like C tier. It's probably on par with like the Legion armor. It doesn't protect as much. It's okay on weight, and its effects are a bonus. So I think C tier is perfectly fine for it. Then we have the Marked Trooper armor. This is more of like the NCR's armor in the Divide. Marked Men will also be wearing this. This protects you for 8, which is not very much for medium armor. That is one of the lowest. I think it is the lowest that we've talked about so far. It weighs 20, so it is still hefty. It's not really worth the weight to armor investment there. It does have 2 bonuses though, +1 endurance and +2 guns. +2 guns is fine, +1 endurance is pretty good, and that gets you more health, more rad resist. So that's okay, but this one is probably one of the worst ones for the Marked Men, and I would say this one's D tier. Maybe above the metal armor because it doesn't come with a downside technically, but it doesn't come with a whole lot of upsides, and its armor rating isn't that great. Then we have the Marked Tribal armor, which is like the Legion's version of the Marked Men. This one protects you for 10, but it weighs 26, being extremely heavy and not giving you that much protection. It does come with a +2 melee weapons bonus and a +1 strength bonus. +1 strength is kind of good because that is more for melee weapons, and it will get you even more melee weapons, so this is more like +4 melee weapons. And it can also get you more carry weight, but for 26 and only having 10 armor, just not good enough. This one's also going into D tier. Like, these two are the worst ones. The patrol one is slightly better, but it's not that much better. These ones just aren't really worth taking for medium armor. Then we have all of the NCR armor, which this counts for the bandolier armor, the face wrap armor, the mantle armor, the military police armor, and the trooper armor. All of these are exactly the same in terms of stats, however they do look slightly different, and there's multiple versions of them, which is why we have like 6 characters right here. NCR members will be wearing these, and they do count towards the NCR. And these ones are pretty disappointing too. These ones have 10 armor on them with 26 weight, and that goes for all of them. None of them have any bonuses whatsoever, and this armor just isn't really worth taking, because as soon as you get combat armor, it gets outclassed. If you got like the Centurion armor, or if you got the Ranger armors, they're just a whole lot better than this. This one is also going down to D tier. The good thing about these though is that you can find them all over the place, because there's plenty of dead NCR troopers, and you can use them to repair other medium armors. That's something that is really, really nice. A lot of medium armors can actually just get repaired from these anyway, not even needing jury rigging. If you have jury rigging, then these are fantastic for repair fodder. But it's very similar to like metal armor, where metal armor is fantastic for repair fodder, but it's not really that great as actual armor. After that, we have the NCR Ranger combat armor. The Ranger combat armor, you can actually get quite a few of these, and they do have pretty good defenses on them. You're probably not going to find them until later on in the game when the Rangers do start showing up in this armor, and they look really cool. Like, this armor set is one of the coolest, like, sci-fi post-apocalyptic armors out there. It is awesome. And the armor's pretty decent in terms of overall stats. It protects for 20, which is good, and it weighs 30, which isn't too heavy. This isn't anything crazy, because it doesn't have any other bonuses than this, but it is just solid armor all the way around. So I would say the Ranger armor is also probably, like, up into B tier, above the Centurion armor, maybe, yeah, it's probably above this armor too. Below the Desert Ranger armor though. The Desert Ranger armor is honestly like bordering on A tier because it is pretty good for the protection. It just doesn't have any bonuses to it. And if you just want protection, there are some other options that are a little bit better. But other than that, like Ranger armor is solid all the way around. It's a really nice armor and it looks really cool. Then we have the NCR Ranger Patrol armor. This is more of the common armor that regular Rangers will have, not the elites. And this one is just weaker than theirs. It does way less though. So this one also counts as NCR armor, so same with the Ranger. So you will be part of that faction if you put it on. But this one protects for 15, which is okay. And it weighs 25, which is also okay. This is just combat armor. This is just straight up combat armor. It's the same as combat armor in every way, so I would also put it C tier, right next to combat armor. If you want it for defenses, it does all the same things there, and that's not a bad thing. That's pretty decent. It's just it's not as good as some of the other medium armors are in comparison. Then we have the Recon armor. Recon armor you usually find with like the Brotherhood, although it's not associated with the Brotherhood, so you can wear it outside of that. This one protects for 17, and it weighs 20, and it gives you +5 sneak. That's pretty good. It's not going to be as good as Christine's, because Christine's just gives you more protection and the same bonuses to it, but this one isn't bad at all, and I would probably put this one like in the middle of B tier as well. I think it's above average, and it's pretty nice to have. Then we have the Riot gear. The Riot gear is basically the lesser of the advanced and the elite Riot gear, but it's still quite good. You can find this in the Lonesome Road. This one has the same stat line as the Ranger combat armor, so it's 20 defense and it's 30 weight. However, this one comes with 2 bonuses, which is nice. 5 more guns and 1 more agility. Both of those are great. More agility is actually going to get you even more guns, so you'll actually have like +7 guns from this. And 1 more agility is great for basically any sort of build, because it's faster reloads for every build and it's more action points for every build. So it's good for a tank build, it's good for a like in-between build, it's good for a guns build. If you want to stay at range, it's pretty nice. This one I would just say is like A tier. I think it's pretty good because of the bonuses. It appears that I have 2 of the same armor again for some reason, so let's put that one up there. And let's talk about this one, which is the Stealth Suit Mark II that you can find in Old World Blues, as well as you can upgrade it in Old World Blues. This one has 14 defense on it, which is alright for medium armor, and it does weigh 25, so again, it's alright for that. It's not as high as some of these other things, but this one does come with a lot of bonuses, and I guess another negative where the suit will talk to you, depending on whether or not you like that or not. It could be a pro, it could be a con. You could always install a mod and get it to be quiet forever. This one has the highest amount of sneak bonus out of any armor, where it gives you +15 all the way up to +25 sneak. Having 25 more points go into a single stat is kind of crazy. That is really nice. Gives you +1 perception, +1 agility, and it also makes it so when you're crouch walking, you have 20% faster movement. This one is the best armor if you want to do a super stealthy build and you want to sneak around a lot. And for that, I think I'm actually going to put it into S tier. It's not really the best in terms of defenses, but in terms of utility, it's fantastic. And if you like playing the very sneaky stealth sniper style, this one is fantastic because you don't need to invest nearly as many points into sneak. You also get bonuses with perception and agility, which is just more stat points on top of that. It's actually even more stealth on top of that, so it would also go up to 27 stealth points from just 1 piece of armor, nothing else on it. That's really, really good. Our next armor is the US combat armor. This one is kind of like the reinforced combat armor, but better. So this one has 18 defense on it, which is nice. That's more than regular combat armor. That's more than the reinforced combat armor. It's almost up to the Mark II combat armor, which is great. It only weighs 25, so it is less than other combat armors, which makes it a pretty good option. Has good health, and it also has 2 bonuses of +2 survival and +3 guns. You can find this all over the Divide too, and it's not that hard to find in Lonesome Road. So this one is actually pretty decent as well. I would say that this one's also towards the top of B tier, maybe up into A tier. A tier if you go there and get it early on, then very good. Same thing goes with like the Desert Combat Armor too. Maybe I'll just move this one up here. It's like low end of A tier, high end of B tier, somewhere around there. Both these kind of fit into the same spot, where if you go and get them early, they're really strong. If you go and get them like at the regular times that you'd probably be going to the DLC, still quite comparable to whatever you're using. If you're going to their like late game, maybe not the best compared to some of the other options that you could get. And then our last armor is the Van Graff combat armor, which is again basically regular combat armor. However, this one does have technically 1 more point of defense to it. Still weighs 25, gives 16 defense, no other bonuses. This one I'd also say is like C tier. It's above regular combat armor, and basically you're only going to use it for one quest. And this is where I'd put all of the medium armors. There's actually a good selection of medium armors, and most of them are pretty decent, besides some of the early game stuff that's just not really that great. Well, I guess the marksman stuff isn't necessarily early game, but that's not really that great. These other ones in the early game just aren't way great. The rest are actually pretty good though, and there is some really, really strong medium armors. Next time we're going to be taking a look at light armors, which there is a lot of, and that should be really fun. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below on medium armors. I'd love to hear them. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye!